Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the show today. It's going to be an amazing show. Welcome to Ponchatoula Live, the show that we make it easy to connect with the people of Ponchatoula. My name is Mark Verbois. I've been a guest host here a couple times here on the show, and I'm excited about today's episode. Today's episode is a special one that it's the 50th episode. We've been doing this for a long time. And our guest today is the one who started this entire extravaganza that we've been doing for the last year or so, and been promoting the city of Ponchatoula in our area. The guest today is a very special friend of mine. In 1994, I was a freshman, walked into the halls of Ponchatoula High School, and along the walls to this day, I still remember I was, maybe 150 pounds soaking wet. Short little freshman walking the halls, and these big tan banners said Layrisson and Richardson for class president and VP. And to this day, I saw something the other day that says, it doesn't matter how tall you get, that you'll always be somebody you look up to. And this person is that person to me. I passed him in the height category, but like I said, I've always admired and always looked up to him for what he's done for our city and the friend that he's been to me. Without that being said, for our 50th episode, we're flipping the script today. And our founder of Ponchatoula Live and Ponchatoula.com, our special guest, Mr. Parker Layrisson. Welcome.
Thank you, Mark. You'll never physically have to look up to me again. As you know, you're probably 6 inches taller now. Unlike you, I never grew out of being a short freshman at PHS.
Well, like I said,
I grew out width-wise, but not height-wise.
Well, I think most of us had a little width addition, but like I said, I'm very proud and call you a friend. And like I said, I've always been admired for what you've done for our city, and like I said, especially what you've done for the site and got.
Well, thank you, man. The feeling's mutual, and I can't thank you enough. To think that we're at 50 episodes amazes me, because it seems like we started a few weeks ago.
Right.
But you've hosted a number of our best episodes, and I thank you for that. You were a great guest. So it's neat. It's a little weird to be on this side of the interview. So I'm eager and interested, but I got to be honest, it feels a little strange.
Well, like I said, hopefully it's going to be a fun episode, and I think everybody's going to enjoy hearing your story, because it's I count you as a friend, but it's an amazing story that you have. So let's start like we do on most guests. Tell us about growing up in Ponchatoula. You come from a background. Let's back up just a little bit. Tell us about your family. Of course, your dad was a long-time sheriff.
Mark, the difference between you and me is that you have real broadcast journalism training and experience, and of course I don't. And I've heard, maybe you can confirm this, that the best interviewers are able to get something that nobody knows out of their guests, and a scandal or a confession is just the coup de grace, right? The best you can get. So I don't know if this is like an Oprah episode or what, but I'm feeling like I already need to confess the giant scandal in my life. So this is very embarrassing as you said, founder of Ponchatoula Live, Mr. PHS 1995, Ponchatoula just runs in my blood, right? But the dirty little secret for me, the scandal that I got to confess, is I'm not really from Ponchatoula.
Uh-oh.
Now, you ask about my family. My family's been up here since like the 1890s. And all three of my brothers and my dad and my grandmother, and, they're all from Ponchatoula. But it's a little known fact that I was born while my parents were living in Killian. So I'm a Livingston Parish boy. Now, we moved here when I was probably a year and a half or a year old. And so, yeah, that's my scandal. But
well, here's the other funny thing. I technically wasn't born in Ponchatoula either, but I still call it my home, and just as you did. And I think, like I said, it's in our blood here.
That's one of the beauties of this town. I think back about our 50 episodes, and today, a friend of mine and I gave a presentation to the Ponchatoula Rotary Club, and it's centered on insurance claims for the hurricane. And so we got to talking insurance, and I thought about two of my favorite insurance agents in the world, both of whom were guests here, right? One is Philip Bankston, one of Ponchatoula's favorite sons. The other is Benton Timms, who's new to town, but he, probably equally beloved. And I thought that was such a good example of this town, about how you don't have to be from here to be a really big part of here, right? I mean, Benton has come in and blended in a real quick time, and everybody loves him and buys his insurance. And Philip, who, grew up here and still lives here, but has his business, just out of town in St. Tammany, is loved too. So it's kind of neat. You can be around here for 100+ years, like my family, and Ponchatoula will treat you great. Or you could be up here now because, maybe you lived in Homa and the storm hit you worse than it hit us.
Right.
Ask those Chalmatians who've been up here for a few decades. We make you one of our own pretty quick. So
That's right.
I do feel blessed to live here. And I think it's kind of funny that you and I do this show and neither one of us is technically from Ponchatoula.
Right. And like I said, I think a lot of people have tuned in since then, but this storm has given another example of why Ponchatoula is the town that it is, and why we take care of our neighbors and how we take care of each other. And, I know, like I said, I've been very proud of you as a family, and you and the rest of your brothers and your parents, and what they've done for the city. But tell us again about, like I said, lead into, like I said, your dad has a background, and I know we've talked about it before, but and how you became, like I said, and you growing up through the city, and y'all kind of live downtown. It's a great area. So tell us a little bit about that.
I'm blessed beyond my wildest dreams, and my three biggest and favorite blessings are, being born to Eddie and Celeste Layrisson and growing up right here in Ponchatoula, and then marrying, a former a strawberry queen, Brandy Bruno,
right,
and having her agree to move down here and live with me on the, I grew up on the 7th Street. We moved over to 8th Street. And then the third big blessing are my two boys who came along. And I've always kept a pretty tight little radius here. Like I said, I basically moved only one street over. My office is at the corner of 5th Street. So, it's only a few blocks in the other direction. But it's pretty neat. I loved growing up downtown. I'm one of 4 boys. My older brother, Jean-Paul, was out the house, about when I started school. He's 12 years older, so he went off to LSU when I was probably around kindergarten or 1st grade. But my brother Bree and I were only 18 months apart. So we grew up running the roads on our bikes. That was my absolute favorite thing to do, was ride bikes and play sports in Memorial Park or anywhere we could.
Right.
And then my little brother Louis came along 6 years later and, added to the family lore. But it was a great life growing up here in Ponchatoula. Got the best parents in the world. Any faults I have are my own. And it's just been wonderful. This has been a great place to live. I'm so glad that God put me here. And I feel like it's now the perfect place to raise my own boys. So we're having fun. They're 5 and 3. And a thing or two about raising those little ones around here. It's a fun ride.
Right. And like I said, it's the adage, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. And I think that's a testament of your family and how successful you and your 3 brothers are, and how wonderful, like I said, your parents, and how that led you into meeting your wonderful wife. And like I said, now your apples haven't fallen far from yours, and y'all will live downtown and get to experience the same thing you did growing up. So I think that's a true testament. So, we talked off screen a little bit about the halls of Ponchatoula, and I think many of our guests are tied to the halls of the Green Wave.
Yeah, of course.
Like I said, tell us about your time coming through school. You were and when I say looking up to you, you were Mr. PHS. I was only lucky enough to be considered Mr. PHS in the ballot. I didn't even get that far, but tell us about that. You had
it's not as big a deal as you'd think, Mark, because in my family, I have 2 other, my dad and my brother Louis are quick to point out they were Mr. PHS before and after me. So my reign didn't last long.
Right.
But I feel like Ponchatoula is a great place, to educate children. And, you work in education now, so you know better than I, but I look at the great education that my kids get starting in preschool at Strawberry Castle Preschool. Blessed there to have my next door neighbor and Michelle Sellers, who's a great pre-K teacher. I think still my kindergartner's favorite person ever. Her sister's the assistant administrator. Melanie was my classmate. You mentioned being class officers. Vote for Will and Parker and Melanie. She was our class, secretary every year. And then, of course, their mother, Miss Diane. So it starts early here in Ponchatoula, and it reminds me of the great education I got here. So
to tie it in, we used to volunteer there in high school.
Oh, right.
So it's been a staple of Ponchatoula forever. So like I said, that's true. It's a testament of how great it is, So.
So, my kids are getting a great education now at Strawberry Castle and St. Joseph. And I did too. I went to St. Joseph like my dad did, and now my own son did, and made the best friends of my life at St. Joseph School. They remain my best friends. I have 2 sons. They're 2 godfathers of St. Joseph School graduates. And, I still run with that same crew. Will Richardson's
Right.
been my best bud since we were little. I saw him here today. I ate with him at Rotary Hut today. He's still my best pal. Now our sons are friends, which are really, really cool. I got to bring my boy over to his house for a play date after school on Tuesday. Chad Richard, Ben Perrin, Brandon Perrin, these are guys I grew up with, and I don't get to see them as much as I'd like, but I still consider them the best friends I have. Now, I know I'll see them one time a year, which is Brandon Perrin's birthday camp out behind his mom's house.
I've heard the stories. I haven't been, but I've heard many stories from y'all.
That's been going 30 plus years strong. So I'm looking forward to that around Christmas time. But, I think talking education for me, the memories start at St. Joseph. I had a great preschool experience in Hammond at Wellspring, which no longer exists, but Miss Meisner was our principal. Sure, she was great, is a great woman. I just admire her so much. And there were just great people there, not just the teachers and principal, but Mr. Orso, the janitor, the custodian who passed away recently, was just one of the classiest, best guys you'll ever meet. I mean, he just led by example, and we admired him, and he was just a great man. Coach Mutt Burner coached us in baseball and basketball. Just one of my heroes for all time in life. He's the reason I'm a New York Yankees fan. He's just a great guy. He's just, was wonderful. So it was parents, and then, the people that deserve the most probably thanks from me from that era were what I call my other moms, my St. Joseph moms. And by that, Will's mom, Paulette Poche, like a second mother to me. But she wasn't alone. All the moms that I would stay with, Miss Roberta Connolly, Robert Connolly's mother, was wonderful just so awesome to me. Miss Sandra Johnson, Ben's mom, Miss Jeanette Richard.
One of my teachers, wonderful lady.
I mean, when they say it takes a village, boy, thank God these ladies were in our village, right?
Right.
So,
and you talk about the testament of our city and those guys that you just lifted off. I went to the football game, the homecoming game here for Ponchatoula this past week. Saw all three of them. So, I mean, they are raising their family here, and we, nobody wants to leave. It's such a great town. So, and as our viewers can talk, and we talk about, great people. If you're watching today, that you actually can go on, and we have live chats, and we're going to add these in. But speaking of great people, we have Miss Faye Ivaninsky.
What a wonderful lady. Show. Hey, Miss Faye, I love you.
So she says, glad to have Parker on the hot seat and glad to be able to watch again with finally getting service back. Of course, in our area, that those are watching from out of town, we had a lot of issues with electricity and then the internet. But she said, glad to call Ponchatoula home now. So
I hear you, Miss Faye. We just got internet back within the last week at my house. And with two little ones that have grown accustomed to watching TV on demand, we limit screen time. Brandy doesn't let them watch too much. But we learned when we were evacuated, they'd never seen commercials before.
That's
They have not been pleased with the rotation of DVDs that we've had. So I'm glad we have service back for sure.
Yeah, and for those who are watching maybe from out of town or out of state, like I said, our area was hit very hard. And like I said, it's great. We're starting to see some normalcy back, and it's good to see for our area. But we talked about the halls of Ponchatoula High and the Green Wave, and this is the one thing I don't hold against you. But you went to most of the state, go to LSU or Southeastern here locally, but you were a product of the great Tulane University in New Orleans, and you continued that Green Wave tradition and went to Tulane. So tell us about your time in college and how you.
Well, sure. Well, I followed my dad down there. He graduated from Tulane in the '60s with his best friend Carl Cleveland, who was the stepson of Ned Richardson, legendary Ned Richardson of Richardson's Hardware, grandfather to my best friend Will Richardson. So it just seemed like a natural thing to do to join my best friend Will in heading down to the school where, in his case, his father and grandfather and uncle had all attended. Uncles, multiple, had all attended. And for me, it's where Dad went to school, and a real special part of my life. I met some great friends. The football is not as good there as it is at LSU in most years, but in my case, we were blessed. They were undefeated and ranked 7th in the nation my senior year.
That.
So we had a lot of fun. We went on road trips. We went into the Liberty Bowl. Got to do that with my dad and brothers. It was a real hoot. But I'm really grateful for the education I got at Tulane, and especially for the opportunity to meet a really diverse group of students. Tulane draws people from all over the country. So, for the first time in my life, I was among a lot of Jewish students. You know, you grow up
Right.
in
Right.
Ponchatoula, the only Jew you might know is Jesus. And, you
Right.
know,
Right.
of course, he's the best, but, you know,
True. True.
to learn from people from other cultures and other areas from all 50 states was a real blessing. So I
So
love it.
tell us about living in New Orleans. How was that
Yeah.
different than living in downtown Ponchatoula?
Safety is the first thing that comes
Right.
to mind. You know, I mean, I felt blessed to get out of there without being a victim of violent crime. When my older brother attended Tulane, there was some really bad violent crime in his vicinity, and he ended up transferring to LSU. And I'm not sure, I can't speak for him, but maybe that played a part in that. But I certainly was a property crime victim. I remember at
Right.
least a
Right.
bike or two getting stolen, and you just didn't feel safe there the way you do here. So, but it was a wonderful place to live. I mean, when you're 18 to 22, as I was in college, you feel bulletproof. You're a bit oblivious to the dangers of the world,
Absolutely right.
and it was just a great town. I mean, it's full of culture, it's lively. I
Right.
lived there later in life too for a little while when I worked in the court system in federal court, so I loved it. But if you don't mind, Mark, I'll circle back. You asked me about PHS, and I neglected to really get into that. I got awful on track of talking about St. Joe's. So if it's okay, I would love to
Sure.
thank some of the people that were big in my life at PHS, because I do feel like meeting you and a ton of other friends there that I didn't go to St. Joseph with was so important to me. And I felt like I got a great education. And, you know, it started at the top. Mr. Allen was a wonderful principal, Coach Thompson, all of the, you know, Miss Richardson, you know, the whole administration was great. But the teachers to me were what really shined. You know, when I look back, I was blessed with a world-class education at Tulane, great professors at LSU Law School, at American University, you know, all this great education. But I can't think of, say, a history teacher or any kind of teacher in that genre that captivated the classroom better than Coach Steve Grigas. I mean, when he got
Absolutely.
fired up talking about General, you know, John J. Blackjack Pershing,
Right.
or from that to Elvis, whatever. I mean, the guy brought charisma, smarts, the whole package. He captivated the room. He had us all interested in history.
True.
As did, you know, eventual principal, but my other history teacher of great note, Miss Cindy Foster, then later Cindy Evans.
Wonderful lady.
You know, she was a mentor to me. I mean, from the day I showed up, Coach Peggy Allred was looking out for me and Will, and
Right.
took us under her wing, and was just great. The Halseys, I had each Halsey
One of my favorites.
for homeroom, you know, first Miss Judy, then the Colonel. The list goes on and on. I could never list them all, but I'm just so grateful for the education I got at PHS. The classroom instruction prepared me for Tulane. You know, I had no problems. You know, frankly, you know, the smartest students I ever met were still probably in my PHS class. You know,
Right.
I'd say, you know, I had classmates at Tulane that went on to great things. One of them is currently the president of the Los Angeles Dodgers. You know,
Wow.
they did wonderful things around the world, but they're not as smart as Jill Taylor, who sat next to me at PHS. You know, it's
Right.
just, it was a great place to be. And the person that probably deserves the most thanks from me, the guy I'm most grateful for, is our mutual friend, you know, Dr. Danny Williams, who was then
Yeah,
Mr.
wonderful
Danny
man.
to us. But he was our key club, you know, he was my teacher, but he's also our key club advisor. He's been a great mentor to me throughout life. I'm blessed to work with him now. But he introduced each of us to Key Club, which is a great service organization.
Absolutely.
And it was him that really helped me, you know, develop a focus on serving the community, putting others before yourself. And I just spent countless hours at his house, you know, sitting in that chair. Eventually I got to sit in that president's chair.
Right.
It was a special deal. Only you could sit there, basically. And, you know, he just treated us like his sons, you know. So for 4 years, it was like having this amazing avuncular figure in your life who you knew you could rely on and you could call upon for guidance and anything you needed.
Right.
And I'm sure 20 other PHS students would have stepped up for me as much as he did.
Right.
But, you know, I just want to thank all those folks. And to those I forgot to mention, because there were many more, you know, I think Mary Beth Bodker, Miriam Summers, there's just so many great teachers that I had.
Right.
Yeah. I'm sorry, Mary Beth Crevetto.
Right. We
Mary
all
Beth
know
Bodker's
Crevetto.
a great woman too, but a different,
Right.
different Mary Beth. But thanks for that. But yeah, PHS was special. It was then. And I had a ton of fun, you know.
Right.
Fortunately,
and for those that don't know that, you know, we talk about Mr. Danny Williams, Dr. Danny Williams now, like I said, we all know him as Mr. Danny, now works for you. And like I said, it's kind of come full circle here. that
It works
like
with me. Yeah.
or
No.
works
Yeah.
with you, works at your office, should I
Yeah.
say?
Sure.
Um,
Sure.
but he has been such an important figure for all of us. But our
Yeah.
connection, when we talk about Key Club, Mr. Danny, I'm sure you're watching. Parker and I were joking that you're the soon-to-be president-elect for the Kiwanis Club, and we were joking
Yeah.
that we could have been there for caucus and done like we did in Key Club days and caucus you. And those are the
Right.
days that you talking about the education side, but what Ponchatoula and Mr. Danny and the Key Club did for most of us, is we taught us to be men and positive figures for the community. So it's
Yeah.
we all got a ton out of walking those halls, and how special it was, and the people that formed all of our generation is now reaping the benefits of our community that we could turn around and do the same. So
And it was so much practical education, Mark.
right,
I mean, the
right,
things that Mr. Danny taught me in Key Club, I used decades later when I was Rotary president. It was just this kind of service above self mentality, a real sense of community. But also, I would say a sense of higher standards. I mean,
correct,
we were the best school in the parish, and we knew it. And it wasn't like a braggadocious pound on your chest thing, but you felt like you needed to honor. Look at Mr. Allen in the principal chair. That was the chair where legends like AJ Bodker, Will Ed Butler, all these big time guys that lived life the right way, and served our community well and led by example. You just felt called to a higher standard when you were there.
right,
And
right.
that was a special place for me for sure.
And like you're saying too, I think there's a lot of people that go through high school and it's just high school and it's just another step in their life. But it's a mark of pride for many of us that went through there. And like I said, we're proud to say we're Ponchatoula graduates, and what it made us. And like I said, the connections that our generation and our friends have all got. Like I said, you can go down the line of the special people that have walked with us through those halls at the same time. So that's amazing. Tell us now. We touched on your family a little bit, and for those who don't know, your family has a law background. And when I say that, like I said, your dad was sheriff, and your brother is now police chief, but the rest of y'all are lawyers, and so that connection there. Right. What made your decision when you went through college to go into law as far as being a lawyer and stuff? Where did that come into place?
Well, a few things. One is, unlike my dad and Bree, I was not brave enough to get shot at for a living. When you mentioned college, I mean, by the time I was in college, Bree went to work as a cop at 18. He decided he wanted to go work full time and go to school part time. And so I think he started at Ponchatoula Police Department on his 18th birthday, and went in with him. He was volunteering, before that, to the extent he could. So I just didn't have, just like unlike Dad and Bree, I didn't have the personal stuff to be a high school football player. I was the nerd who took stats,
Right.
I also just knew I didn't have that kind of cop instinct in me. And so the law felt like another good place where you could help people and serve people.
Right.
But in a way that would better suit my skill set. And frankly, I looked at my dad and some of his best friends, including his closest friend, Carl Cleveland, and another close friend, Tom Waterman. They were both attorneys, and it just seemed like they had a pretty good gig. I mean, their lives seemed pretty neat to me. And then, I mentioned my brother Jean-Paul earlier being 12 years older. By the time I got out of high school, he was already an attorney. So he was a great mentor in many ways to kind of, show me the way. But, the other thing about my family, you mentioned we have a lot of lawyers in this generation, 3 out of 4 sons. And we've had a lot of law enforcement between Dad and Bree. But we've also had a lot of small business owners in our family. The real heart of my family are these strong women, that came before me. I think of my mom first because she's my mom, but my grandmothers and my great aunt, both of my grandmothers were very strong women who did it on their own. My grandmother, Inez Layrisson, was widowed at a young age when my dad was only 16. And so she had to take over family businesses, a bottling company that made soda pop. Eventually, she and her sister, Myra Parker Vaughn, they were the Parker sisters, and she and Aunt Myra had an insurance agency. So at this time, long before it was fashionable for women to be owning and leading businesses, these 2 young widows, the Parker sisters, who were by then the Layrisson and Vaughn sisters, had a business. So, they did that. My mom's mom came from abject poverty. And, through divorce, she was left to raise 4 kids on her own. And she was a seamstress. So she had to make do, making her own way. And she was remarkably successful at getting all these kids to be first generation college. And in my mom's case, she got a master's degree and, 4 successful kids out the house. So it was seeing these kind of strong women. My mom owned an antique shop when I was a kid.
Okay.
And, my buddy Will, who we talked about, Will Richardson,
Right.
he worked there. He was kind of the custodian who would clean up. And part of my journey has been not just to be an attorney like my brother and like Carl Cleveland and Tom Waterman, these guys I looked up to, but also the notion of owning a small business that could create jobs and provide for the community. That was really appealing to me. So for example, today we had our Rotary meeting, and in addition to the program I talked about, we met to talk about our golf tournament that's coming up here in a few weeks. And folks, if you like to sponsor the Rotary Golf Tournament, quick plug, there's still sponsorships available. We donate the dollars we raise to scholarships for local kids, and it's a wonderful program. And frankly, with the hurricane, we're way behind schedule in what we would normally raise. But my firm, by owning a small law firm, which is essentially a small business, I'm not only able to create jobs for these people around here, but I'm able to donate to Dollars for Scholars and be in a position to say, not only will I take the day off to work that day to cook the jambalaya for the tournament, but I can give members of my team time off from our normal work to go help. So those are all things that kind of factored into the career decision.
Well, before we get too far away from your family, I think all of us know that you're a big Red Sox fan.
Yeah, right. No way.
But I understand.
Very painful time of the year for me with the Sox thriving and my Yankees stuck at home.
Absolutely.
Thanks for bringing that up, Mark. I thought you were a friend.
Well, I understand your love for baseball, though, came from your godfather, right? Who had
so my godfather, Jack Vaughn. Yeah, absolutely. He was a great baseball player who went on to play shortstop at Mississippi State. And my dad always viewed Uncle Jack. We called him Uncle Jack. He was technically a cousin. My dad had very few cousins. But Uncle Jack Vaughn, one of the great athletes of Ponchatoula history, a PHS quarterback, star player on many, many different teams. Dad always viewed him as a big brother type. They were really close. And he became my godfather and took great care of me. And so when I was a kid, he used to bring me up to visit. He lived in Starkville, Mississippi, home of Mississippi State University. And he would take me to watch ball games up there at Duty Noble. And he even had his own seats. His name had a placard. And now there's actually, I think, the dressing room for the umpires is named for him. He went on to be an NFL referee. He played a huge part in my love of baseball. Unfortunately, my baseball talent did not match my enthusiasm for the game. So I'm a big fan. I've got Yankee Stadium seats here in the office and pictures on another wall over here of multiple Ponchatoula athletic teams, old Ponchatoula American Legion teams. The legends of Ponchatoula baseball. That list is super long, from the Reagans like Spike Reagan to the Bahams like Carl Baham. I was blessed. Mr. Carl Baham assisted Mutt Burner as my coach when I was at St. Joe. So, that man knew more about baseball than anybody I knew. The Dufresh family, Mr. Buddy Dufresh was a mentor of my father. I mean, I love baseball, and I especially love Ponchatoula baseball. And I'm so glad you brought that up, Mark, because we're at a crossroads here with the storm where Hurricane Ida has just devastated Athletic Park. And Athletic Park is one of the true treasures of Ponchatoula historically, because we had this great semi-pro championship team that played there. And my grandfather was a member of that team, and Jack Parker Vaughn, his dad, Jack, the senior Jack Vaughn, all these guys had roles in it, playing, coaching, etc., as well as many other fine men. But the long story short, we as a community need to rebuild. We need to bring that back, because it's not just a great part of our history, but it's a phenomenal facility for the high school team to play in. So I'm hopeful the city will step up and do the right thing and take care of that park, because it means a lot to me and you and everybody else. And I only got to play a few games there because my career petered out so young, but I sure love it.
I didn't get to play for Ponchatoula High. I played, City All-Stars, and lucky enough to even hit a couple home runs out of there. But it meant a lot to me. Like I said, that was the deal when you were a kid, was to play in the big park. But for those that don't know, it structurally messed up the stadium pretty bad. And right now it's basically going to tear you know, I don't know if tear it down,
But
but they're going to have to rebuild a lot. You know,
that's another key difference between us. I had warning track power, right? I batted second, not cleanup, but I was a contact hitter.
Well, I only peaked 1 year, and that's why I played basketball and set the bench there instead of playing for the high school. So, before we get too far away from you know, from you growing up, I've always admired what you got to do and the cool places that you've been. And one of your experiences was your time spent in Washington. Tell us about that. I've always thought that was wonderful and a great and parlay that into, you also did some time there at the state level, right? Kind of working at the Capitol, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. So I've been blessed to travel, you know, places I never dreamed of as a kid. And in college, I got two great travel opportunities. One, you mentioned the opportunity to do a junior year up at American University, which is in our nation's capital, Washington, in a great part of town in the northwestern quadrant. Just wonderful campus that's, you know, nestled among different embassies to foreign countries. You know, I think Japan's near there. You know, it just really ritzy part of town that you could never afford to live in unless you were in some kind of subsidized dorm.
Right.
But so I went to school 3 days a week, and 2 days a week I worked for one of my heroes, Congressman Bob Livingston, who was a very prominent Republican congressman that served our area for a long time. When I worked for him, he was chairman of the House Appropriations Committee, basically in charge of the nation's money, probably one of the 5 most powerful people in the country. And he would go on to become elected Speaker of the House my senior year. But that was really neat, you know, living in a big city with no car, taking the subway to work 2 days a week. It was phenomenal.
Right.
The other great opportunity I got in college was I got a summer job to go work for YPO, Young Presidents Organization, which serves corporate presidents, and basically was a glorified babysitter. But it brought me to places like St. Moritz, Switzerland, you know, Salzburg, Austria, you know, just places I never could have afforded to visit, and really opened it up to me. And then, like you said, I finally got the opportunity to head back home to the state capitol and got a job there with the Attorney General's office for my first year out of law school, and had a great office on the 23rd floor. It was wonderful. So, yeah, I've been blessed with a lot of neat traveling opportunities.
Well, that's awesome. Like I said, I've always thought that was very, very cool that you were able to do that. And like I said, you know, a lot of our friends, like I said, the cool thing about being part of Ponchatoula and stuff is, like I said, you can kind of live vicariously through a lot of our friends. And I did that with you on that side, and I thought it was very awesome.
I'm glad you brought that up, because one of my lifelong best friends is an academic, and he just finished his dissertation to get his PhD. And the topic of it was basically paying congressional interns. And because he knew I had done that, he let me sit in on his dissertation defense. Sorry, guys, nerd alert. I know this is probably not the most interesting thing, but it was really neat because he had done this study that basically showed how important interning in Congress, especially, but other places in DC, could be to careers, because it opened doors and lets people in kind of the club, if you will, you know?
Right.
And, but it's very hard to do when you're not wealthy. You know, I was fortunate that my parents sacrificed a lot to send me up there, and we were, you know, we're not rich, but they were doing okay. You know, they were, you know, on the upper part of middle class probably. But, so it's kind of neat a few weeks ago to be able to watch my friend, now Dr. Joseph Jones, do this dissertation. And I sure hope that they are successful in getting these internships paid so that poor kids and middle class kids can get the same kind of opportunity I did.
Right. And so we talk about politics, and one of our local, one of the local political connections, who's a friend of yours, has actually made a comment here, Mr. Tony Licciardi. So what about Parker's internship under beach ball? I bet he learned more than anywhere else.
You know, so, you're right.
So join us, Tony.
Beach ball, Tony. First of all, thanks for checking in. I thought you had a big appointment this afternoon and would be watching the rerun later. So it's a pleasure to see you chiming in live. Beach ball is a fellow named Mike Russell, who was the longtime special assistant to Attorney General Richard Ayoub, the Louisiana Attorney General, who's a great man and a great mentor to me, and, you know, set the record for most votes ever received by a Louisiana candidate. I think he's still the only guy to get 1 million votes twice. Was just a wonderful Attorney General. But yeah, Beach Ball and I were the traveling assistants to General Ayoub. Well, during the year he ran for governor. And I did learn more that year than just about any other. It was one of the great joys of my life to get to travel the state of Louisiana during an election year, see the 64 parishes. You know, we grew up at the Strawberry Festival, and spoiler alert, it's the best by far. But you know what? The Zawali Tamale Festival was a lot of fun. The frog rain, the Rain Frog Fest might surprise you. The
Right.
Shrimp and Petroleum Fest is a blast. So Louisiana is wonderful, and there's all
Right.
these great places to go. And I would never have done that without this neat guy named Beach Ball, who happened to be my mom's high school classmate, who was just, you know, just happened to be a big shot at the AG's office and helped me out when I was young.
Right. Well, all those experiences had led you back to Ponchatoula, and you
Mhm. mentioned
mentioned it earlier. And you've now opened a successful law firm here locally in Ponchatoula in downtown again, a beautiful home that y'all restored and made your offices. And those are the kind of that family, I say family ties that you grew up here and your love for Ponchatoula. You didn't come in and necessarily build something new. You want to restore these homes, and your business now is labeled there,
Yeah,
and you've been very successful. Tell us about your thought to open up here locally and
sure.
kind of what your law firm does,
Yeah.
you know, in your day-to-day business.
Well, thanks for mentioning that, Mark. You're too kind, probably. But yeah. So long story short, Ponchatoula always called me home. I mean, like I said, I've been blessed to travel in all these wonderful places, and we've just mentioned a few. But I could never stay away that long, you know. I mean, except for the fact that college might take 4 years, you know, and I chose close nearby universities, except when I was in DC. I always wanted to come home. So when I did, and I had the means to open up my own firm here, it was important to me to keep it in Ponchatoula. We've seen some really good lawyers that grew up here and maybe sometimes even started here. Say Brad Berner comes to mind, you know, guy I
Mm-hmm.
always respected and looked up to as a kid. Have basically moved on to the quote unquote greener pastures of Hammond and wherever. So it was important to me to try to stay here, you know. And this house, the Rayford house, which was originally the Roussel house, is so special to me. You know, if you watch our episode with Mr. Jim Perrin, he talks about the history of it. And, you know, we've
Mm-hmm.
actually got a photo of it in the book and all. But it was owned by some dear family friends of ours, the Rayfords. So Jerry Rayford and his sister Cindy inherited it from their father and mother who lived here, and it just had fallen into disrepair because nobody had lived here for a while, and it
Right.
just didn't work out. But I used to pass here every time I would ride my bike to either grandmother's house. So grandmother Inez Larison lived about 2 blocks that way. I'm
Mm-hmm.
pointing here southeast, and Mama, as we called her, Mama LeBlanc, lived about 2 blocks due south, right there, you know, off of Fifth Street and Oak Street.
Mm-hmm.
And I just knew this. I knew it was a beautiful home. I knew it was a friend's home. Jerry Rayford and my dad worked together at the sheriff's office 25 years. He was a fixture in my life. So it seemed like the perfect place to put my office. It
Right.
wasn't zone commercial when I bought it, so we had to go through the process for that. I learned a lot renovating it because we basically tore out every wall and, you
Mm-hmm.
know, went down to the studs. I had a great contractor, Brad Paraloo. So, folks, if you're looking for a great, reliable, honest contractor, I know a lot of people are right now. I couldn't say enough good things about Brad. He was wonderful, and it's been a real pleasure to be here. You know, I have a 6 block commute, so I joked with my wife at the time my commute was going to increase by 50% or something because it went from 4 blocks to 6. She didn't
Right.
think that was that funny because she drives like a half hour to work every
Right.
day. But yeah, I love it here. I feel so blessed to be here on this corner, and my team is comfortable. So thanks for asking that. And you asked me. I'm sorry, I missed the question. What we do? We basically help injured people to
Mm-hmm.
get well and to get paid. I'm an auto accident injury attorney. I help people after they get typically rear-ended by a big truck or a car, and our team will help facilitate medical treatment so that you can see
Mm-hmm.
great specialists and get well, get back to feeling better so you can get back to your normal life. And then we go fight the insurance company to get you paid. So
Right.
that's what we
Well,
do in a nutshell. And it's not the most glamorous work. People love to poke fun at it, call me an ambulance chaser, compare me to certain TV lawyers. Yeah, I take it with a grain of salt and try
yeah.
to
Right.
smile because I know it's important work. I was inspired or called to this line of work, but when my mom went through this, my own mom, who is not too happy at all. She brought herself up by the bootstraps and went nearly 70 years of life without ever needing to take somebody to court. But after decades of paying State Farm every month without question, when they owed her, suddenly they were, not willing to step up and pay her. So
Right.
when I saw that happen to my own mom, I got personal, and I wrote a book. I got a copy of it here.
Wonderful
Accident
book.
Handbook. If anybody ever needs a copy, I'll give you one free. It's over 300 pages of information. But yeah, that's what we do in a nutshell. So thanks for asking.
Well, like I said, you've taken care of our family before, and many in the area, and we're very happy of the service that you provide. It's been very successful. Not to get too
wrecks
far.
can happen to anybody. I think of some of our wealthiest friends, and of course, I protect my clients' confidentiality very closely. So if you hadn't mentioned that I'd helped you, I wouldn't bring it up. And I thank you. You've always said such nice things about what the work we did for you. But that can happen to anybody. It's not a class thing. It's not just poor people or minorities, or it's not just those people that you don't feel like look like or act like you get in wrecks.
Right.
They happen to everybody. The roads can be unsafe. And when they do, I simply just believe in accountability. The people that cause them ought to have to pay for the harm that they cause, because, sadly, injuries happen a lot when people get in wrecks.
Right. Well, the people that you've taken care of have grown to love you, and we come with another comment from one of our guests. Miss Ruth Hebert said she had the joy of getting to work with you in a small way, and it's great seeing you today.
Miss Ruth, I love you, and of course we loved your husband. The late Representative Dennis Hebert was one of our heroes. We have talked about him on numerous episodes, when we talked to Dr. Bill Wheat, when we talked to Coach Trish Landesh. Man, Mr. Dennis Hebert, what a hero he was. And speaking of baseball legends and Ponchatoula athletics, but I loved working with Miss Ruth. Yeah, she and beach ball were some of the best bosses I ever had. So she was up there with me at the Capitol, and I was a wide-eyed kid that didn't know anything, but was too dumb to know I didn't know anything at that point in my life. And she looked out for me. So Miss Ruth, I'm forever grateful for you, and I thank you, and I really appreciate you watching.
Thank you for your comment, Ms. Ruth. Also, before we get too far away from your business side, tell us, because I've always admired this side of you, tell us about some of those programs. You touched on them earlier about what you do for the community, the bikes for the kids, and those kind of programs. Tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. Well, a lot of what we do in the community, we keep confidential, because when somebody's on hard times, whether they have a medical issue or poverty or whatever, we don't want to shine a light on that kind of stuff. You just try to do good for good's sake. But some of the fun things we do that are high profile, the one that comes to mind is Bikes for Kids. So I just got these, Mark. I have to get you one. Wow. We have these so this is our logo, but Bikes for Kids Louisiana is my pet project. It's my passion play. As I mentioned earlier, my favorite thing to do ever when I was a kid was ride the streets of Ponchatoula on my bike. Will Richardson and another, gang of boys and we used to have this little club. We called ourselves the Rad Racing Club, because there was this great BMX bike movie called Rad out at the time. Travis Halsey, if you're out there, you know what I mean. I know you're a big fan. But anyway, that was our most fun thing to do when we were kids. So a few years ago, I just kind of noticed, man, life's changing around here. You don't see kids out there. Video games have made children more sedentary, whatever. So it just seemed like a great idea to get bikes into the community. And one thing we do is a little different than most bike giveaways. Christmas is coming, and you're going to see a lot of people giving bikes away, hopefully, especially to poor kids who need it. And I love that. I applaud that 100%. But our program is different. Our program is not designed just to target kids who are very needy. Thankfully, we reach a lot of truly needy kids, but our focus is on rewarding great activity. So we ask our community, educators, pastors, parents, whomever, speech therapists, if you know kids, tell us about great kids who are doing great things in the community, and we want to reward them with bikes. So we have kids of all ages, 5-year-olds like my little boy, up to 15-year-olds, teenagers.
Right.
And we get these stories, and, at this point we've given away, approximately 100 bikes. It's just magical. These kids come up here, and they're not only excited to get a bike and a helmet and be recognized, for doing good, but they're so proud when they realize, hey, I'm getting this because I earned it. It's not just a gift. And, we've got my team involved. I mean, Mark, you've been very generous in your commentary about my firm. One thing I got to say here is it's not a one-man show. My name may be the only one on the door, but I'm blessed with this incredible team. You know, at the top, great attorneys like Megan Notriana, Leon Christ, Stephanie Stafford, talk about PHS pride. One of the great students in PHS history is about to take the bar exam this upcoming year. You know, but I've got a great team, you know, and so, you know, I just want to recognize all of them. My paralegal, Joe, the assistants, Amy, Heidi, Danny Lynn, you know, they do this stuff as much as I. So when I think about Bikes for Kids, they're doing so much legwork to get these bikes there. And then we take turns giving them away. And it's actually kind of a draft of sorts, you know, because we'll get these applications in and we might get 100 applications one summer to give away 25 bikes. And the team will look it over and say, oh, I really connect with this kid, you know?
Right.
So for example, you know, my law clerk, Rayleigh Willoughby, now, you know, her sister actually won a bike, but that's, you know, a separate thing. But she would see a kid with a similar story to hers and say, I got to give my bike to this kid.
Right.
So it's kind of funny in that's a draft. Sometimes two of us want the same kid and we just have to deal with it. Oh, Kelly Brandon, I see with a comment.
Right. She's got a comment.
She's got winners in her family, so she knows the drill.
Said it's a cool cup that you have to promote for the bike program, always doing for others in the community. Great friend,
Kelly, come get your cup. You swing by the office and we'll give you one. You've definitely earned one. You've got winners in your family.
Well, I mean, just like everything you touch in your life, Parker said, like you talk about your firm, and like I said, every time I've gone there, everybody's professional and friendly, and it's a product of, like I said, the business you have and the standards you set. So, not to come off on a total different tangent, but you know, we talk about kids. So I don't want to get too far, and you touched on it. One of our connections is both of our wives are named Brandy, and you know, we joked in my episode that we had Lance Trailer,
and they're both too good for us, Mark. We outkicked our coverage with these beautiful Brandies. Yeah,
right. But our other friend Lance Trailer, we joke around about, you know, the three of us when we all kind of hung out. It was they're all the wives or family or Brandies, and we call them Brandy cubes. Right. So tell us about your wonderful and beautiful wife and your two amazing little boys.
Well, I thank you for asking, because they're the best thing in my life. I mean, there's nothing else that comes even close. My wife is 100% too good for me. And thank goodness she either doesn't know it or is that charitable to marry me anyway. But we met at the Strawberry Festival about 12 years ago. I was working at the Rotary booth. And, you know, she walked into my life and, you know, we got together very shortly thereafter and, you know, have never separated since. And it's just been amazing. You know, she is so much more than beautiful. You know, she's known to be a beautiful woman, as is your wife, as is Lance's wife. You know, all those Brandies are gorgeous girls, gorgeous women, but she's brilliant too. You know, I mean, she graduated from high school as valedictorian. I think she only made 1B in undergrad studies at Southeastern. And then she got a master's degree at LSU, again, with straight A's, you know, a 4.0 average. And she took that world-class brain into one of the least profitable professions on earth, social work. She works in the school system in Livingston Parish, helping kids, mainly kids with behavioral issues, you know. And it's a very difficult, very stressful job. Never more so than now. I mean, when you think about kids and behavior issues, you work in the school system, so you see it every day, right? Well, here we are in the middle of an 18-month pandemic with a hurricane that just blasted us. And she's in Livingston Parish where these same kids flooded in 2018 and 2016. So these kids are living through like a Book of Job style life. You know, they feel like they're in the Pharaoh's Egypt and, you know, in the time of Moses. And so, of course, they are predictably often acting out, not on their best behavior. And she's there for them. She's got their back. She's there to help them, support them any way she can. And she does that for me and my kids at the house. And my two little boys they're just the best. They're the best thing in my life.
Awesome.
You know, they're fun. Luke, my kindergartner, is so much like his mom. It's just funny. These little,
thank God.
Yeah, thank God for him. But he is my little. He's the rule follower of the two, but he's fun. You know, he's got a sense of humor. He's really smart, and he's just a lot of fun to be around. James is my fun rule breaker. You know, he's a lot like his namesake. He's James Edward Layrisson II, named for my dad Eddie, who's James Edward I. and he's kind of got that mischief. He's a little bit more like his Uncle Bree than my wife. Uncle Bree is a kid, not as an adult police chief.
Right.
And he's something, man. Yeah, he's a handful.
Well,
He's my
like I said,
strong-willed child. I guess they're both strong-willed, but
right. Well,
Luke's
like I
more
said,
of a
I remember us, like I said, going back. We've been friends since 1994, 93, whatever that was. And I remember you going through life. And when you met your wife, like I said, you could see it in your face and what she meant to you. And you just had a change come over you. It was almost like somebody that lost weight that, had this new revived, kick in their step. So you always been very admirable of your wife. And
she's proof what's the old saying, good things come to those who wait. I mean, we've been friends since 1994. So, Mark, I was never that good with the ladies. I had a girlfriend in college I fell in love with. I thought we'd get married. We did not. And then there was a long time between then and meeting Brandy. And wow, with Garth Brooks' song, Unanswered Prayers.
Right.
If you're out there struggling in matters of the heart or anything else, let that story be hope to you that sometimes the best is yet to come, and you got to do it on God's time, not yours. And
right. Well, we joke because, like I said, you and I being, and it's kind of funny, our generation, that you're a few years older than me, but still, there's a group of our generation that had kids, fairly young, that most of them are in high school or even college age now. And then there's a large group of us that had kids later in life, and they're all kind of in this kindergarten, first grade area. And like you said, you just kind of you got to go at God's time. You can't force it. And,
look, there's no perfect time to have kids, right? If you do it when you're young, you're full of energy, your bank account's probably not ready for a kid yet. Your wisdom may not be there. When you wait till you have gray in the beard, like I have, you have different challenges, but you have resources and
what you don't have is the kneecaps. Because, like I said, I go outside with the kids and my knees come back and I'm back's hurting and everything else. So that's the only negative side of that. So
when we leave here in 10 minutes and I get home, my kids will be jumping on me, beating me up. And unlike my 24-year-old version of myself, this 44-year-old version will feel it.
Right.
But it's the best thing I've ever done. I mean, I am Luke and James's dad and Brandy's husband and Eddie and Celeste's son, way before I am attorney at law, business owner, or anything else. I mean, I love all those things, but the family part's definitely what's most important to me.
Well, we're not quite to the end, but we're pretty close. I want to give you, like we do the other guests, opportunity. Is there anything that we haven't touched on that you wanted to talk about that means a lot to you, and about our city or your family or your history of where you got here?
Yeah, I mean, Ponchatoula, it may not seem like our finest hour, because if you love Ponchatoula like I do, your heart probably breaks when you walk around town, drive around town. I mean, your favorite oak tree might be split in half. Your roof may have a blue tarp on it. I mean, let's face it, morale was not that great in July before hurricanes hit, right? I mean, it's just we have been going through some stuff here, right? So it's okay to recognize that this may not be the prettiest fall in the history of Ponchatoula, because of my son Luke told me the other day in the carpool line, Ponchatoula feels like a junkyard. He can't wait for it to go back to normal. That being said, I have so much hope for this town, because in my case, I could live anywhere in the world. I mean, God blessed me with a world-class education, parents who supported me in every conceivable way. The skills to be an attorney in New York, California, Washington, or Moscow. And yet I chose to come back here because this place is special. And it's not special because we had the prettiest main street. It's not special because, our oak trees are as pretty as Savannah. It's special because of the people.
Right.
And so the whole purpose here behind the Ponchatoula Live Show, which is 50 episodes deep, and the Ponchatoula.com project, which is, still forthcoming at a very slow pace, is to shine a light on what makes this community special. In my opinion, and Mark, I think you share it, it's the people, and there are so many examples of that. And the storm itself is a prime example of that. In my instance, when I left, we evacuated. I have these two little boys. We didn't know what would happen. And when we heard how bad it was, I called my brother Bree, and Bree said, look, stay away. It's bad. There's no sense in bringing them back into this. And sure, family stepped up and did what family should do. Bree got in there with a work crew and cleaned my yard in addition to my mom's and his own. But you know who else joined them? My neighbors. I think of my next
Right.
door neighbor, the greatest neighbors in the world, Cullen and Michelle Sellers. And Michelle's sending us pictures and letting us know everything's okay at our house. And Cullen, who is the lieutenant of the of the wildlife agents, he's working double shifts. And can you imagine how hard that job is after the
Right.
storm for him? Guess what he's doing in his off time? He's helping pick it up my front yard because he knows I'm 14 hours away or what, so that's special. I don't
Right.
think that happens in Houston where my baby brother Louis lives. He's got a great life there and he's got some great neighbors, but I just don't think that we have that kind of community here.
Right.
There, right? It certainly didn't exist in Washington, D.C. or anywhere else I've lived, when I went away. New Orleans, you mentioned, Baton Rouge. So don't forget Ponchatoula. This is a special place. We're going to come back. Most of the big, beautiful oak trees. I'm looking at the one in Dr. Benson's yard, his office yard right now. I mean, it's still there. The oak tree I had dedicated to my sons, the Luke James oak on the other side, the north of my office, it's still there. We may not have as many trees. The view may not be as pretty, but that's not what made us special.
Right.
It's always been about the people, about the sense of community. And the other thought that goes with that is it's a really sad time in that we have lost some Ponchatoula heavyweights lately. I think back to heroes that I grew up with, right?
Right.
That just loomed larger than life. Mr. Charlie Blackwell. Has there ever been a kinder, more supportive, better friend in Ponchatoula history? I'd say no way.
Right.
He was just such a great friend of my dad, and my dad was one of countless people he was that good to. Steve Pugh, our state representative, what a great guy he was.
Right.
What a huge loss that was. Mark Griggs may not be a name you know as well, but he was a mentor to me and a business giant, but a humble one who didn't broadcast his business. We've lost some really, CJ Scanduro. The list could go on and on here, folks. And so in some ways, it's super sad that those guys aren't walking the streets, and I won't see them next time I go to Paul's Cafe or Pappy's or wherever. But at the same time, I'm kind of called to feel like it's time for the rest of us to step up and honor their memory,
right?
Take away a little bit that we learned from them. And that's kind of what the hope of this show was. When we started it, it seemed like titans in this community were passing away and we were not getting their story. And, it was so important to me to get my podcast with my dad done while he could still do that, after 2 bouts with cancer and many other health scares. And we've gotten legends on this show like Reggie Peavy, who fought world wars. We can't get to everybody, but, I'm going to miss those guys that we talked about, but I'm so glad I got to learn from them. And shame on me if I don't step up and do the best I can. I'm never going to be a community servant on the level Steve Pugh was, or as good a friend as Charlie Blackwell, or a business titan like Mark Griggs. I'm honest with myself. I don't have that in me, but I can take little things I learned from those great men and the great women that have come along. And, to me, that's our charge, is to take what we learn from them and bring it to the next level and just do our best to keep this place special. Because, if we don't do that, it doesn't have to be special. It's not like there's some magic wand that made this magical little town, right? If we ignore the lessons we learned from those great people, this won't be the place it was for our kids. So anyway,
well, before
sorry
we
to
get
be up on my soapbox so long, but that's my feeling, and that's kind of why we do Ponchatoula Live, why Ponchatoula.com's coming, why we keep it positive. This isn't the place to get on here with gripe, with rants and raves. It's just kind of the place to put Ponchatoula's best foot forward and hopefully introduce you guys to more people you might not know. You know.
Well, and speaking of that, like I said, I wanted to get to these 2 last comments that came up real fast before we get to the end. But Tony, again, Mr. Charter came and chimed in, said, "Great interview, guys. Thanks for putting it out there, keeping out such a quality content." And then Mr. Marshall Muse said, "Awesome interview." So,
yeah, Trey, hey, you too. You guys got to meet, man. 2 great educators. Watch his episode, Mark. If you haven't, you probably have. And if he hasn't watched yours, Trey, please give old Verbois a look here. But you guys are doing it. I mean, hey, you guys are practicing what I just preached, right? Y'all are stepping up for the community. Right. Susan, thank you for that comment.
And Susan Warren said, "Great show as well." My thing that I've always been proud of, and that I think we need to understand, you talk about education and the people that have come through the show. We've had 50 or 49 guests, and you make the 50th. And many are educators, and when we talk to kids, and you touch kids and I touch kids on different levels of community service and in schools and coaching and different things, that they have to understand that those 50 people that we've had come through this show are all examples of what you can be. Nobody has to be, have a ton of money or come from something great. That they really, we have such amazing people that have come through this town, and any one of these people that come through the pipeline of Ponchatoula or anywhere else and come to our town, you can be anything you want and can be an amazing person and make a difference. And that our episodes that we've had, the 50 episodes, are all great examples of those type of individuals that any of those children and young people could be. So that's that. I've always been happy to say I was part of this on a small level. And like I said, you're coming through and making this such a great episode and a great project that you've done for the last year. And folks, we don't plan on stopping. Like I said, we have some plans in place for some more great episodes and more great guests to come. So,
and speaking of plans, Mark, I don't mind sharing that we plan to add the website. I mean, it's kind of the irony of this is it's ponchatoula.com. And if you go to that website, you find nothing, right? We've hired a great web developer, John Barnes. Mark, we went to high school with him. His company Gumbo has developed a site. I mean, we he's got it there.
Right.
We just don't have all the content for it ready. But we're working with great content providers. Mike Fulmer's daughter, Callie, who married Christian Boutwell. Callie and Christian Boutwell are working with us, doing a great job. So, eventually we're going to come to you with some content. And I can tell you, it's going to be positive. It's going to be interesting. And it's going to focus on what's best about Ponchatoula, leading with the people. You have links to these interviews, but it's going to be stories like hometown heroes. It's going to be things like educators that are doing a great job in the community, police officers that are doing a great job in the community, healthcare providers. We're going to focus on those folks that are stepped up and go above and beyond. I think of like Bubba Trish, who works for the city,
right?
And I hear that he just stepped up so big after the storm, even though he lost his own house. Tree splits his house in half. He's without a home. And the first thing he does is grab a chainsaw and go start working 18-hour days to clear the streets and get it done. The fire department. We've got these great guys. Some have been guests on this show. Many more will come. But we're going to do our best to keep, providing that. At the end of the day, it's a side hustle, right? There's no money in it. We don't have sponsors. We're not getting paid. So, if nothing else, it costs us a little money. So it will be a slow rollout. And for that, we beg your patience.
Right.
Papa C, Cheney Phillips, what great friend, great man. Thank you for saying that. I enjoy your comment. And Mark, if you don't mind. Oh, hey, Ashley, I hope your husband told you I was asking about you and your baby today. One of our best guests ever. Nobody else brought a baby in their belly except you, Ashley. So you hold that distinction.
Wonderful family.
Thank you.
Wonderful
Mark,
family.
if you don't mind, I want to say one other thing. I just want to close by thanking my parents. I may have briefly said earlier, I have the best planets on earth, and I really believe that. But Eddie and Celeste Layrisson were so good to me and my brothers. And as I said earlier, any faults I have are my own. My mom is just such a strong, brilliant, wonderful woman. She was so nurturing. She's so good to my boys and her other, dozen or so grandkids. And Dad is probably both the most talented person I've ever met in my life. I mean, the guy's just he's a 5-star or 5-tool prospect as a person. He's athletic, he's brilliant, he's charming, etc. But he's also just one of the most, good-natured, truly just, wonderful men you'll ever meet. So, I got to just throw something out to them and say, Mom, Dad, thank you. I am so grateful to be your kid, and I really mean that.
Well, like I said, the times I've ever been around your parents, I've always been a huge admiration for them, and what they've done for the families, for your family, and like I said, the way they raised y'all and how the family is going out and touched and made a great impact in our community. So, again, love your family and your parents, and I think it's been a great episode, and I'm proud that you brought me on, and glad to say that I'm a friend of yours, and
likewise.
And really proud of the product that you put here and represent our city and our area. And like I said, I thank you very much.
Well, thank you for all you do for our community, for this show. You've been a great friend to me, and I'm really grateful for that. So thank you.
Like I said, any last words before we go?
No, I just, for my boys, Luke and James, if you guys ever watch this, Lord knows you're not going to be interested in it for the next 20 years, probably. But just know that I love you. I'm so proud of you. The first 5 years of parenthood have been amazing. I am so grateful to be your dad. And I know that you have great things in store. And just do your best in life, boys. Be kind, be grateful, focus on gratitude. And you're going to make mistakes, and that's okay. We all do. But just know your daddy loves you, your mama loves you, and we're really proud of you.
Well, the two boys have something to be proud of and calling you dad, bud. So it was a
Thank you.
great episode, and I'm glad we got to spend some time and talk. And like I said, for our viewers, thank you for tuning in, and we appreciate you for joining us. And like I said, stay tuned. We have some more great guests lined up, and thank you for joining us today. Y'all have a wonderful afternoon, and thank you for joining Ponchatoula Live.
Thank you.